Yusuke Yotsuya might be the most disgusting loser in existence who actually thinks he can be as cool as Sasuke if he tries acting like him. But deep down he really just wants to be kissed by Naruto. It turns out he will eventually get the chance to have a blondie boy for himself, but for now let's figure out how he managed to silently rizz up the most popular girl at his school with his edgy roleplay. He acts pretty normal at school and tries to stay out of the way, minding his own business, living by the philosophy that all humans are trash, and since he's a human too, that makes him trash as well. He might not have turned out like this had his father returned with the milk. Every day he comes home from school and spends the rest of his day in front of the TV, playing some no-life RPG game on his knockoff PlayStation, waiting to be carried by some random dude online. After that, he gets in bed with a sock and his phone, looking at pictures of the most popular girl in his class, called Yu Shindo, until he falls asleep. One day during class, he notices Shindo talking to her fellow classmate called Hakazaki. He wonders if they're close as he's never seen the two of them hang out before then. After class, his teacher warns him to decide upon his future plans in high school. However, while he's talking, all Yusuke can think about is playing his game because he doesn't care about this stupid school. His teacher basically calls him a word that means cat when he scorns him for never saying what he really wants to say. Anyhow, he must submit the form to him tomorrow. When he's about to leave, he notices that Shindo and Hakazaki are still hanging out and tells them that they can go, as he is on cleaning duty today, so he will lock up behind them. However, when he turns around, they are gone already. All of a sudden, he hears a creepy laugh and the board behind him begins filling up with chalk drawings. The floor becomes all colorful and he starts freaking out as if he accidentally took crack. But then he suddenly gets teleported and finds himself falling from the sky into a pond. While wondering what the hell is happening to him, he looks up and sees a giant tentacle monster straight out of an anime girl's dream, ready to poke some holes in him. Just then, Shindo and Hakazaki come out from behind some ruins and help him. He asks them what is going on, but Shindo cuts him off to say that a weirdo with half a face is about to appear, and he should prepare to be freaked out by him. Suddenly, the background changes and Yusuke feels a hand over his shoulder. He turns around to look at the half-faced dude standing behind him, who greets himself as the Game Master, and can't seem to finish sentences in full. Yusuke freaks out and the Game Master says that he will now explain the instructions for their next quest. He then shows them a board which says that they must fulfill the village chief's request within the next 14 days. He also shows them a progress paper which reveals that this is the third quest, with the first two being marked as completed already, and consisted of slaying a goblin and finding 2 settlements. Yusuke can't stop being a sissy, so Shindo kicks him. However, to Yusuke's surprise, he felt absolutely no pain. They must complete 8 more mini-quests that are left before the main one can be completed, and after finishing each quest they will gain a new member until the last one, which requires 10 people to finish. He then officially introduces his fellow members, Shindo the level 3 Wind Wizard, and Hakazaki the level 1 Sword Warrior. In order to determine Yusuke's role, a wheel is spun and his fellow members hope he gets Warrior. However, they dry up faster than rain in the Sahara Desert when he ends up with the role Farmer. With that, the Game Master vanishes and they all return to the new world in their zesty role outfits, as Shindo and Hakazaki express their disappointment with him getting the super rare Farmer role. She explains to him that she was the first one who was teleported to this world and was given a quest from the Game Master. After she finished it, she was able to return to the real world, but there, she was given a new quest from the Game Master, which was to befriend Hakazaki. The next time she was teleported, Hakazaki was there as well. They got another mini quest to do and were sent back home with the mission to be alone with Yusuke in a room. Shindo then gets him to squint his eyes, and to his surprise a menu pops up which he can interact with like in a game. He scrolls through his practically empty inventory and finds a level 2 hoe and a level 1 sickle. Besides that, everyone has role-specific weapons and gear that only they can use. Minutes later they pass a glowing green circle and Yusuke asks what it is. Shindo tells him that it's a log point which stores events that happened in the past, and you can view them by touching it. He sits down and interacts with it, and it shows him the moment when Hakazaki first appeared in this world and was crying about not being able to complete the quest like a coward. Hakazaki becomes embarrassed and starts defending herself until they find a group of goblins nearby, and Yusuke charges straight at them. Unfortunately, he effed around and found out that he is weaker than an insect-type Pokemon, as his sickle gets broken in one shot without doing any damage. Panicking, he turns around and asks the other two for help, and Shindo epically casts a wind spell. However, it literally just gave the goblin a nice breeze. At level 3 she's just as good as a hairdryer, and Hakazaki is still a scaredy cat who uses her sword just as good as a brainless rock would. He tries picking up her sword but finds out he can't pick up weapons that don't belong to him. And so Yusuke decides to carry this fight on his own and summons his trusty hoe. But the goblin reminds him that this isn't Minecraft and one-shots him with a single strike to the head. He falls down and wakes back up as a ghost and realizes that he has a death penalty of 30 seconds. Once back, he tells Shindo to use her magic to create a small sandstorm and then stabs the goblin with his stick while letting himself get one shot once again. He realizes that he just needs to keep chipping away at them as they fight him. Soon he revives back up and Shindo compliments him for having the guts of a brave idiot. Yusuke then asks what happens if they all die at once, and she reveals that if that happens they will all die in real life. Yeah, shit just got real. With that revelation, Yusuke becomes more aware and careful about his fighting style. At night he checks his broken gear and finds out that it will take them 5 days to regenerate on their own. With that, they decide to head towards the village in the west to work towards finishing the quest. Yusuke asks them about the reward for completing the quest and they tell him that they will get a chance to ask one question from the game master. For Shindo's turn, she asked why she was chosen and found out that someone she knows requested it. For Hakozaki, she asked the game master who he is and he told her that they come from the distant future. Yusuke wonders what he will ask the game master and they all get some rest. One midnight while camping near the village, Yusuke woke up to some goblins attacking them and fought them back. But then he hears Hakozaki scream and turns around to see half of her lying on the floor and looks up to see the troll holding Shindo, who tells him to run because this is unwinnable. The troll gobbles her up and realizing that if he dies it's all over for everyone. Yusuke grabs Hakozaki and runs as fast as he can. Just 30 seconds until she revives. The next day, Hakozaki gets most of her body regenerated but her hand still remains damaged because the troll ate it. They realize that this means Shindo won't get revived until they defeat the troll and they wonder how on earth they're going to do that. Yusuke's attack power is 0 and Hakozaki just has no spine at all, so they go to the village in hopes of completing the quest without Shindo and reviving her a different way. But when they meet the village chief, he requests them to get rid of the giant troll that showed up near their village. Yusuke realizes that he must take matters into his own hands or else they are doomed. So he tells Hakozaki to stay in the village and make him a sandwich while he goes out to grind some levels in the woods. He tells her to keep her flat ass safe inside the village because he can't afford to die just yet. With that said, he walks away with a devious smile on his face thinking just how exciting this place is compared to crappy Tokyo. He heads into the woods and finds a log point on the ground. He interacts with it and sees a conversation between two girls about boys. Shindo asks Hakozaki who she would like to join them next. If it's a boy, then maybe she would want one of the athletic guys from the judo club so he can fight for them. Besides that, she despises all guys because they are childish and like to talk about weird inappropriate stuff. You hear that? I think she just called us men of culture out. Shindo says she understands and if it was up to her she would like for Yusuke to join them. And our boy starts getting more than just his hopes up.
What did he say?
However, he remembers that there are 2 Yusukes in their class and wonders which one she was talking about. But then he sneezes and makes the log point go away just before he gets the answer to his question. After seeing all of that, he gets his priorities straight and notes that he might have a harem situation and sooner or later, one of the girls might confess to him, so he should keep his hopes up. With that in mind, he starts training and eventually finds a forest with a good view of the village. He soon runs into a horde of goblins and starts farming them up. To make things easier, he uses flashback ninjutsu to relive some of his childhood trauma memories and takes out his anger on the goblins. He manages to level up to rank 9, barely missing 10 as one of the injured goblins manage to get away. He sits down and wonders about his chances against the giant troll, but then gets notified that Hakozaki is dead and her revival timer is stuck just like Shindo's. He wonders how she managed to die in a safe zone, but then looks at the village and finds it lit on fire. He starts running towards it while wondering how she managed to set the whole place ablaze when all he asked her to do was to make him a sandwich. But when he gets to the village, he finds a log point and discovers that the village was attacked by the troll, and Hakozaki let herself get eaten to protect an NPC. He also finds out that Hakozaki actually suffers from some illness that makes her body really weak and she needs a lot of expensive medicine in the real world. But anyhow, she has been trying her best to be as useful as she can. Just then, he looks up and notices the troll standing in front of him. He starts running away, but the troll jumps behind him and eats him off into the distance like a ragdoll. Thankfully, he falls down in a river and thinks about Hakozaki trying to garner sympathy with her desire to become a pharmacist while her parents have the burden of paying for all her expensive medicine. Despite that, he acknowledges that she is still far better and stronger than himself and by his own standards. He can't let someone more useful than himself die before him. Soon the troll jumps behind him and they start playing a game of Tom and Jerry, as Yusuke runs for his life with his tail between his legs while the troll chases after him jumping like a frog. This keeps up for a little while, but soon he realizes that he can't run forever and starts losing hope. But just then, he sees the injured goblin from earlier that managed to escape him, and he throws his stick at it, which gains just enough experience to level up. Once he hits rank 10, time stops and the game master appears in front of him with his trusty wheel. He gives it a spin and Yusuke gains a new super rare role as the chef. He worries about it for a second but then realizes that he can finally use a blade and takes out his chef's knife to fight the massive fat face behind him. He turns around and notices that this role comes with a super cool passive which gives him Byakugan, which essentially reveals the weak spot of monsters. With that, the game master goes away and time returns to normal. Yusuke runs forward and slashes through the troll's stomach and manages to let his future wives, his friends, revive. Once they are all together, they start fighting the injured troll but get their butts whooped just as easily as before. Still, they carry on attacking it endlessly and eventually manage to tire him out. In the end, Yusuke goes for another critical hit by jumping inside its stomach and slashing him from the inside. Shindo jumps on top of its head to blast its brains from the inside with a wind spell. And just like that, they finally manage to defeat the troll. The time stops and the game master appears in front of them to congratulate them on completing the quest. They all gain XP rewards and rank up quite a bit, but Shindo only gains 2 levels and gets salty about it. After that, the game master tells Yusuke to ask his one question, and he decides to ask him what will happen after the final mini quest. The game master says that he will show them what happened in his world and lets them see a vision of their town, visualizing them from the future fighting against a massive dragon dinosaur monster on Earth. After that, they all open their eyes in their classroom and wonder if they will have to eventually fight against that horrifying monster. Shindo stands up and says that she has tennis practice and points out that the time hasn't moved since they left and thanks Yusuke for his hard work. She says that it will probably be about 2 weeks before their next mission and then walks out before telling him to make sure that Hakazaki gets back home safely. One night, Yusuke is out for his night jog and wonders why he was chosen to fight to protect this city when he hates it so much. Just then, he gets a call from the game master on his phone who tells him that for his next mission, he must go hit on this girl he's going to tell him about. After that, he tells him to go to the girls' restroom of a specific school. Yusuke walks in and finds 3 girls bullying another girl in glasses. He tries hitting on the girl in glasses but realizes that it's probably not the right time and thinks about saving her in fear of failing the next mission. He runs forward and breaks all the phones held by the bullies and flushes them down the toilet. The girls run out, leaving the spec behind with his barbaric phone breaker. After that, Yusuke walks the girl to the bus station and asks her why she was getting bullied. She reveals that she's a streamer and spoke against one of the girls who likes acting all different and cringy to get in good with boys, so they were getting back at her for that. She then starts crying and says that she never even name-dropped her, so she didn't deserve this. But Yusuke just looks at her from a distance and fails to sympathize with her first world streamer problems. After that, she tells him about her favorite game and Yusuke wastes the next 2 weeks playing it. Once their time is up, they all get teleported to the other world and meet once again. However, this time the blue-haired girl is also there and the game master appears behind her and introduces her as the 4th player, Yuka. He spins the wheel for her and it lands on a heat mage and then starts explaining their next quest. This time the revival counter will be increased from 30 seconds to 40 seconds and they must traverse 5% of the map and deliver the goods to Red Otterbow in 40 days. He then goes away just as quickly as he appeared, leaving them without any answers. Yusuke walks up to Yuka and tries to help her out, but she calls him an ugly stalker and tells the other girls that he followed her home one night and broke cell phones of some girls in their school and flushed them down the toilet. The girls start thinking of him as a freak and keep their distance without giving him a chance to explain. They start off with traversing the map in all directions to cover 5% of it as soon as possible. They split up and while walking around, Shindo talks to Yuka and clears up the misunderstanding surrounding Yusuke. Yuka tells her that she has always tried her best to act in a reserved way to avoid bullying, and so she tried to make up with her bullies by using Yusuke as their mutual enemy. Shindo understands and will always continue to stop bullying whenever she sees it. Yuka thinks that she is so cool and starts idealizing her. After that, they all group up outside the forest and suddenly a massive dead bug falls from the sky behind Yusuke. Just then, a female centipede monster comes out of its skull with male pill bugs attached to it. It throws the pill bugs at them and instantly one-shots Yusuke and Shindo. Yuka decides to take charge thinking she's a strong wizard, but then quickly realizes that she's just as useful as a hot water bottle. With that, she gets hit by a pill bug and gets one shot as well. Meanwhile, Yusuke comes back to life and wonders why he's being treated like a loser. Thinking about it gives him the courage to catch a pill bug and chop it up with his knife, throwing it back to punch another pill bug to the ground. He then starts slaying them one by one and eventually gets on top of the centipede as it cannot hit him with its stinger while he's on top of it. He thinks about what he can do to disable this disgusting creature, and begins slicing off its legs one by one, turning it into a miserable worm. He then asks Hakozaki to bring out her sword and then holds her hands to finish it off, letting them both earn XP for the kill. Later that night, Shindo has a dream of her childhood and when she would fight kids who would try to annoy her. She belonged to an infamous family and never had friends, but eventually had one, an older girl named Sayuri. But one day, Sayuri died, and at her funeral, Shindo's father told her to be beautiful and healthy or else she would end up like that. She wakes up from this horrible dream and finds Yusuke lifting some rocks working on his Riz packs. They sit down together and talk for a while. During their conversation, Shindo grabs his hands and begs for his help. She tells him that when she was little, she made friends with this older girl named Sayuri. Sayuri would get bullied at her school for being ugly, and one day she decided to isekai herself to another world. She is the daughter of an infamous biker gang member, and when she entered middle school she knew that it was her turn to get wrecked. However, she was grateful to have friends that stood up for her, and soon realized that her friends were her strength, and so she grew up to be this bold, beautiful girl who took control of her own life. But one day, she got teleported to this world all alone and was told that if all her party members die, it will be the end for them for real, and as she was the only one there for the first mission, she had to be super careful. She then looks at Yusuke and tells him to give her his strength in this world where she doesn't have many friends asking for his help. The following morning they all head to the village they saved from the troll, and find it in ruins. Soon a man rides by with his cart and reveals that it has been over 5 years since the village was deserted. Realizing that time flows differently between the two worlds, they ask him about Red Otterbow, and he shows them the location on a map and reveals that it will take about 30 days to reach it on horseback. They ask him if he can give them his horses, but he tells them to try begging somewhere else and then informs them about a martial arts tournament coming up in a nearby town. The prize for the winner is 3 horses, and they decide that it must be the first step towards completing this quest. They start walking towards the town, but on their way they get ambushed by a gang of bandits. Yusuke strikes one of them but finds out that hurting humans in this world results in leveling down penalties, so they decide to just run away instead. Later on, they notice that Shindo got captured and decide to go and rescue her, but Yusuke says that they should focus on the mission, so they decide on splitting up into 2 groups. Yusuke fights some goblins to level up and goes into the city to participate in a tournament, while Hakozaki and Yuka decide to help Shindo getting themselves captured as well. Yusuke's new role lands on a creature wizard, and just like that, 5 days go by. Although he manages to balance things out by pathetically losing the tournament in 5 seconds to a girl knight called Kahabel. He tries to negotiate with her because he's desperate for the horses, explaining that he desperately needs to get to Red Otterbow fast. He asks if there's any work he can do, and she agrees to help him in exchange for getting rid of the bandits and their hideout. They have half a day, so in the meantime, Kahabel suggests she gives him some sword lessons in the meantime. She completely schools him, reminding him of his depressing days of school where he would always underperform in sports that involve balls and swinging things. Eventually they ride to the hideout with the knights to rescue his friends. He manages to rescue everyone and noticed how Kahabel is a sword maniac who loves cutting everything. Together they defeat a berserker, eventually capturing all the bandits, and in the end, Kahabel suggests they let her escort them as far as she can, alongside some of her minions, but in exchange he will give her his horse upon arrival, and the other condition is that the 4 of them will let her train them with the sword. They all agree and begin their adventure towards Red Otterbow alongside their new companion. On their way, Hakozaki thinks about the massacre of the bandits that she just witnessed at the hands of the knights. With a dream as noble as saving others' lives by joining Big Pharma, she can't help but feel sad for the dead, even if they are monsters or bandits. While she's busy moping around feeling sorry for herself, Yusuke enjoys their trip as he gets to gain free XP, ranking up by healing others and cooking food for everyone. Thanks to these special roles, he's the only one in the team who can rank up without having to fight and kill monsters. Besides that, Kahabel also takes turns at playing Fruit Ninja with them in the name of sword training. They also get to fight some goblins, and Hakozaki finally manages to slay one of them on her own in exchange for gaining some PTSD points. 20 days later, with only 15 days and a few hours left before the deadline, they see a cart being attacked by some monsters in the distance. Yusuke says that they don't really have much time to spare on random NPCs and side quests, but being the noble knight she is, Hakozaki jumps off the cart and says that she will save them even if she has to do it alone, because there's no point in completing the quest if it's at the cost of letting people die. Yusuke looks at her face while trying hard to hide his smile, saying that it's alright and she can get herself wrecked if she wants it that much. Besides that, it could be that it is an important step towards completing the main quest like the tournament thing, and eventually they decide to split up into two groups, where he and Hakozaki will save the cart and join up with them to complete the side quest while the others will continue going towards Red Otterbow. With that said, he jumps down on a raptor with Hakozaki and they charge straight at the kobolds. Yusuke confronts one of them and tries to fight it off but gets defeated by another one. Hakozaki somehow manages to outdo her fastest death record by getting one shot instantly. The fight goes on for a little while as Hakozaki revives and decides to stand up for herself. She manages to slay one of the kobolds by summoning her heavy longsword at the last moment, surprising the monster by plunging it right through it. Soon, Yusuke gets back up too and lures the remaining kobold towards his cart, letting Kahabel cut it down. Once they are all done, they count the remaining survivors to be 6 people in total. They ask him about who they were and what they were doing there, and their leader reveals that they are the soldiers from the kingdom of Diok and they were transporting these nonconformists, including the child, to Red Otterbow. These people are the followers of a foreign religion called Arteros that was banned in the kingdom, and as per the king's orders, they are to be publicly executed in Red Otterbow, which is said to be home to the greatest number of secret Arteros followers. After finding all this out, they all wonder if this could be part of the main quest, as they still don't know what the goods mentioned in the quest refers to, so it could be that these people are the goods. With that said, if they do help the soldiers to transport these heretics, then it would mean that they would be assisting the murder of 2 guys and a kid. While they are thinking, Yusuke focuses on healing the child who is unconscious. Kahabel and the leader of the soldiers, called Camilto, get into a fight over the kingdom's evil ways and dictatorship, but the heroes resolve the fight for the time being as they decide that it would be better for them to all travel to Red Otterbow alongside the soldiers, and then later decide whether they want to fight to rescue the heretics or to let them be and do their job. While stopping to set up a camp one night, Yusuke requests to talk to one of the older heretics called Fafsel. He reveals that they are from the continent of Ila, and requests that they let the young child named Balili be spared. The heroes ask him to share his side of the story, and he explains that currently, there are 2 groups of people living in the kingdom, those who worship the king alone and those who worship the king and the god. They belong to the latter group, and over the years, the teachings of their god have been forgotten and people have resorted to violence and fighting each other over stupid arguments like who the best Spider-Man is. The kingdom wishes to slay all the believers of Arteros, even if they belong to another continent, using that as a narrative to attack small nations. After hearing his story, they all go to sit down with Camilto to hear his side of it. Camilto explains that previously, after wars ended, the families of those soldiers who couldn't make it back, and even those who returned with a few limbs less, would become homeless and die on the streets. But the current king changed all that when he announced to reward everyone with a slave, and thus his family was saved from homelessness. The king wants to unite everyone on the continent, and that's why they must rid the world of all members of the evil religion Arteros. After hearing his side, Yuka gets angry and says that she has decided that dictatorship sucks through and through, and the king is using religion as an excuse to attack and conquer smaller nations to create more slaves. It's basically similar to a huge gang bullying smaller groups and turning them into their lackeys. Being a victim herself, she can't help but speak up against it. After hearing her speak up against the king, Camilto stands up with his weapon and says that he didn't get anything she said but knows that she is trying to insult his king. However, Yusuke manages to calm him down by using some smooth talk and saying that the king is in the right. After, they continue their journey for a couple of days before Camilto informs Yusuke that they need to cross the mountain in front of them and it will take around 7 days. After that, it's a 5-day journey to Red Otterbow. With 13 days and a few hours left on their clock, it seems too close of a call for their comfort. Camilto suggests they use another passage that cuts through the mountain and will save them a lot of time. They all decide to take it instead and start pushing their carts up to the entrance of a tunnel. They go inside and Camilto explains that it's an ancient route and the mechanism at the entrance still works. They activate it and it creates a path in front of them with some waterwork. But suddenly the gate behind them shuts down and Camilto reveals that it's a trap, and she can't let people travel with them even if they are heroes. After getting played by an obviously evil person, they keep moving forward and cross the bridge. They run into many traps and Yusuke accidentally gets pushed into a deep pit. The rest of them make it past and decide to finish the mission on their own due to a lack of time. On the other hand, Yusuke equips his trusty kitchen knife and starts chipping away at the wall to make footholdings for him to climb up with. Meanwhile, the rest of them make it to the center of the entire place where they encounter an ancient mechanism called Gargoyle, which is a man-made fighting machine. Yusuke keeps climbing up and making new steps, but it takes him many turns of falling down, getting KO'd, reviving and going again, until he finally manages to make it out of there. By the time he's out, there is no light source left and he is practically blind. He sticks to a wall and starts using his map interface to make his way out. On his way, he runs into a log point and interacts with it to find out that one of the knights accompanying them died like an NPC. He proceeds to take a light step forward before running into his body, feeling sad about it but moves forward because that's what humans do. On the other hand, Kahabel and the other heroes are attacked by a group of vampire bats while the gargoyle starts walking towards them slowly. They note that it has a key attached to its shoulder and Kahabel moves up to fight it one-on-one while the others deal with the bats. Shindo moves up a little as well and chats with her as they both fight the monsters. Kahabel compliments her and says that she is the one with the most potential among the 4 heroes, and Shindo says that it's because she used to play tennis 2 years ago. Their chatting continues, but then Kahabel gets struck through the stomach and falls down into the water below. Shindo witnesses her fall and realizes that they just lost their strongest NPC, prompting her to start losing her mind. The gargoyle starts walking towards her and she retreats in fear. Luckily, this is similar to how Yusuke manages to level up when fighting the giant troll, and with that XP she manages to level up. Time stops and the game master appears to spin the wheel. Shindo remembers what Yusuke told her about this moment and she uses the time stop to move forward and gets into the position to strike the monster. Her new role turns out to be a sword warrior similar to Kasu, and she manages to strike the gargoyle's chest but it does 0 damage. Due to its thornmail build, Shindo takes back some emotional damage and then gets her left arm broken by a swinging strike from the enemy. She flies away to the edge of the platform but manages to get back up and realizes that her arm got fixed pretty fast. She equips her sword and tries to remember Kahabel's lessons regarding how to fight against opponents with a lot of defense and bigger builds. With that in mind, she summons her shield and charges forward with it. She then sacrifices her sword arm and gets her shield smashed into the ground but manages to slide between the gargoyle's legs and ends up on top of it. She then grabs her arm like a savage and runs the sword through the gargoyle's head into its heart. Just then, Yusuke arrives on the scene and discovers that Kahabel got stabbed and fell into the water. He immediately runs forward and dives down to rescue her, and this makes the other girls become a little angry because he wouldn't save them before. Later that night, Kahabel wakes up and her stomach wound has healed. She also finds out that Yusuke used healing magic non-stop by leeching magic power from the gargoyle's blood and kept at it until she was fully healed. Once he was done, he fell unconscious. Upon hearing this, she turns around to find him sleeping beside her and bends down to give him a kiss. But just then the other heroes walk in and Yusuke's chance of getting his first kiss is swiftly taken away as they all sit down and talk about him. Kahabel says that he reminds her of herself, as he constantly keeps doing his best to find out how much farther he must go before he can die, knowing that his life meant something. She tells them how she is the 70th strongest knight in her kingdom while her father is the 2nd and her 2 brothers are both above rank 15. After they're done talking, Yuka wonders how long it will take to catch up with the soldiers, and Kahabel says that they took the longer route by going around the mountain, so they should be able to catch up to them soon. Hakazaki says that they only have 7 days and a few hours left before the deadline, and just then Yusuke wakes up saying that they've got it all wrong. Everyone gathers around him and he explains that the missions that they had been given have always been vague, in the sense that it was never specified which goblin to kill or which settlements they had to find, or which village chief's requests they had to fulfill. It was always just any goblin, or any 2 settlements, and so on. And by that logic, they must deliver definition-correct goods to Red Otterbow. The heretics don't really meet the criteria, so they are probably not it, but it's not enough proof for them to just give up on them. With that said, he suggests that they split up and everyone starts getting deja vu. They form 2 teams consisting of Shindo, Hakazaki, and a soldier from Kahabel's family, along with Yusuke, Yuka, and Kahabel herself. Team Shindo will go ahead and find merchants and travelers with goods bound for Red Otterbow, and escort them while Team Yusuke will catch up with the soldiers of Deok and rescue the heretics. With everything decided, they split up and go about their ways. While deciding upon ways to ambush the soldiers, Kahabel worries that they sent a routine communication letter back to their kingdom before trapping them inside the cave, and must have mentioned about the presence of knights from her kingdom. Now, if they all go missing, this can lead to a war between their nations, and she doesn't want to be the reason for the next Game of Thrones season. With that in mind, Yusuke says that they must make them believe that her kingdom is not at fault when they go missing, and they must send a letter back to their king. Yuka wonders how they are going to achieve something like this, but Yusuke brings out his creepy smile and says that he's got a plan. After that, they follow them for a few days and eventually catch up. One night, while the soldiers are having some NPC talk, Yusuke comes out of the shadows and reveals himself. He calls Yuka out as well and reveals that everyone other than them died and the other two heroes fell into a trap, unable to get out. With that said, he has now joined the Arteros religion and says that he is there to negotiate for his fellow devotees, and that they have just one night to release them, or else he will use his immortality as a hero to spread the teachings of Arteros throughout the lands. Kamilto says that he would be able to do it even after they release the heretics, and there is no negotiations in that. Yusuke mutters that it sucks to be them and then walks away. Later that night, Yuka creeps out to talk to the soldiers in secret and reveals that she hates Yusuke and his stuck-up self. Now that they're the only two left, it has become especially hard to ignore his wet farts, and so she is there to sell him out in exchange for her own well-being. Kamilto takes her up on this offer and decides to go with her alongside one soldier to see if she was speaking the truth. They walk away from the cart while leaving one soldier behind and continue for quite some time before Kamilto becomes suspicious and realizes that she is lying. He captures her and takes her back, but when they come back to their cart, they see Yusuke sitting on top of it with fire all around him. He has eliminated the soldier who was left behind and has put down the 3 heretics as well, and is there to take revenge for his fallen friends. He burns them all alive in front of him and then sets his raptor's ass on fire as well and makes them chase after it. Once they are gone, he reveals that he rescued the 3 heretics and used their clothes to create 2 dummies. For the third one, he stuffed the remaining soldier in and then set him ablaze for realism to make Kamilto believe that it was all genuine. They both then run away and meet up with the heretics and wait for Kahabel to join up with them. On the other hand, Kamilto and the other soldier catch up with their raptor and send a message back to the kingdom. Just then, Kahabel arrives on the scene and slays both of them down and then walks back to group up with the others. Once together, Yusuke decides to go and loot up their bodies to add more options for the goods they need to complete their quest. For good measure, he also takes the soldiers' heads to submit to the authorities at Red Otorbo as evidence against Deok's schemes. On the other hand, Shindo and the others manage to find a delivery guy with some merchandise for Red Otorbo, and they battle against his bodyguard for the right to escort him themselves. Back in the kingdom, the king receives the letter and says that the soldiers were fools and they should have returned. One of the court advisors suggests that they start researching ways to deal with the other worldly heroes, as they might have to fight against them in future. The king allows it, and we can all see this hooded guy cooking up some nasty scheme for the heroes. Finally, they deliver the heads to the authorities, and that counts as a successful delivery of goods. Soon they meet up with Shindo too, and once they are all together, they decide to split up once again to complete the other goal of traversing 5% of the map with less than 0.2% left to finish it. They all go different directions to cover as much of the map as possible. They continue walking at a good pace for the whole day. But during the night, a snowstorm hits them, and given how warm their cosplay level gear is, they are all at the risk of turning into snowmen and popsicles. Despite that, with less than 0.01% left to cover, they continue walking through the heavy snow. On the other hand, Kahabel thinks back on the time she last met Yusuke and realizes how she failed to tell him about her feelings. Once again, our boy Yusuke failed to lose his V-card because he was just too unhinged to be approachable enough for a girl. Back in the snowstorm, Yusuke makes use of his multiple levels and equips every piece of clothing he can summon at once. He then marches forward and wonders what will happen if they all died in the snowstorm, and realizes that they won't be able to come back to life because it will be the same situation as getting revived inside the troll's stomach. With this realization, he starts worrying about it even more, but continues to be useful and treads forward. Meanwhile, Yuka, Hakozaki, and Shindo walk towards completing the goal as well. However, Shindo is the first one to get tired when she realizes that she has been blinded by the storm and has been walking in circles for the past few hours. Yuka simply sits down during the storm and decides to let the others finish it, while Hakozaki suffers from extreme cold due to her heavy metallic armor and is the first to turn into a popsicle and die. While walking straight with the help of his map, Yusuke runs into a one-eyed yeti and gets into a fight with it. Thanks to his Wish.com Byakugan and kitchen knife, he manages to cut it open and comes out victorious, but then feels a bit sad about its little minions who walk to their mother and cuddle against her in the cold. While going forward, he gets lost in his past memories and accidentally steps over some soft snow, resulting in him falling to his demise inside a hole. Fortunately, he gets revived and finds himself inside a secret dungeon. It's not as cold down there, and he thinks that it might just be the thing they need to finish the quest in this harsh weather. He starts walking around and explores different routes, but soon finds out that the whole place has been shut down with lots of debris. He eventually finds his way into a circular room dug by some kind of massive worm monster, and soon the owner of the place also arrives. Thankfully, it's a passive monster that likes digging around and pooping in people's faces, and being the weird guy he is, Yusuke decides to follow after it through the tunnels that it makes. This goes on for a few hours, but then a real man-eating worm monster comes from behind and eats him up, leaving only Shindo and Yuka behind to finish the quest. Back at Shindo's location, she wakes up from her feeling lost nap and notices that the two champs are already out for the count. She gets up and tells her brain to start braining and uses the map technique to walk in a straight line. Finally, she starts making some progress and notices a village in the distance. She starts running towards it, but unfortunately gets herself in the middle of a frozen lake with thin ice. Her brain starts thinking about her options that she learned from watching Bear Grylls documentaries, but all it can come up with is that they are screwed. She falls down into the icy lake, and that's that for her. Finally, Yuka wakes up from her weebish dream and realizes that the whole party managed to get himself knocked out for good while she was taking her fairy nap. She uses her magic to warm herself up and starts walking forward, but now there's only little time left and her magic is running out as well, and she becomes dizzy from experiencing some responsibility for the first time in her life. Despite the heavy burden, she continues walking forward with the help of her imaginary friends and eventually runs into a strong female magician NPC who has a big snow cat as her pet. She offers to help her and gives her a ride, and they start making some progress, but then she squints her eyes to check the status and realizes that only 3 minutes are left. The magician uses wind magic to give themselves a boost, but it still isn't enough, and it looks like they won't be able to make it this time with 0.001% of the map and 1 second left on the cloak. But with the help of some more wind boosts, Yuka and everyone else opens their eyes in front of the game master as he congratulates them for clearing the quest. They all look at her in amazement, and then the game master tells her to ask her question. She thinks about it for a minute and asks if this world is a real world or just virtual reality, and he says that it's as real as their original world, and if anything, they are the ones who are virtual in it. He further explains that it is Earth in a parallel dimension and all the living beings on this planet are real people with real lives. Hearing this, Yusuke starts spiraling into his dark and depressing arc as he realizes that he set a real man ablaze while he was alive, besides the many others that died due to his actions. After that, they all get teleported back to their world, and Yusuke enters his dark Sasuke arc as he thinks more and more about him laying a person to rest as a 14-year-old kid. Once again in his mind, he thinks of himself as human trash and wonders about who he really is and what he wants to become. After that, he and the other heroes spend their days normally, going to school and playing games while he acts a bit more edgier and darker than before. They all note that their physical abilities have improved and wonder if it's because of all the training and leveling up that they did in the other world. One day on his way back home, he receives a message from the game master asking him about how he feels now that he has put down a man. Yusuke feels disgusted by this and deletes the message without replying and goes back home. Once in his room, a young loli appears inside his room and asks him why he didn't reply to her message. She appears to be the game master's representation in this world and asks him the same question once again. Yusuke says that if he had known about that world being real, in hindsight he would not have killed the soldier, even though he considered him to be a bad person. After that, the game master tells him to go meet their next party member and takes him out to a Chinese restaurant to eat some hot chili dumplings so he can set his ass on fire as punishment for leaving her messages on scene. She then tells him that the man sitting in the corner is a former Yakuza dealer and will be ambushed by a bunch of stupid youngsters in 20 seconds. One of the ambushers is named Keita, who will be their 5th party member. His younger brother called Shuji is also in on this plan, and Yusuke's mission is to prevent them from getting caught by the police. Just then, a bunch of masked men walk into the room with guns and bats, and Yusuke makes the leader trip on himself by putting his foot out. He then stands up and tries to calm them down by using talk no jutsu, but the leader hits his foot and makes him shut up. Yusuke turns around and kicks him in his guts and grabs the bat and then counters one of the attackers in front of him. He then blinds him with the burning dumplings and sends a younger one flying with a kick. The other man calls out his name and Yusuke finds out that he is Keita and unmasks him. He then grabs him and says that he is there to protect them and won't let them kill anyone, but then a Yakuza member walks in with a gun and threatens to shoot him down. Seeing this, the game master offers to help and gives Yusuke his creature wizard glove, and Yusuke uses it to cast voice command on the Yakuza member and makes him stop. He then punches him down on the floor and tells Keita to run away with his brother, but not before kicking the gun guy in the face for good. Later on, he walks up to the rooftop and talks with the game master, who asks him the same question once again now that he has saved the life of a person. Yusuke says that he feels the same about it as before and that he will continue to fight for his justice even though he knows that it is proof of him being delusional. He says that he saved Keita from killing the other guy because it would increase the chance of them completing their next quest, just like how Yuka's mental state was important in them eventually clearing the previous quest. He says that by saving them from getting caught, he has now created a world where they would want to return, and by doing so he's sure it will help them complete the next mission. On the other hand, we find out that Keita and his younger brother Shuji live with their single mother. They are very poor and owe debt to some Yakuza guys. One day, their boss walks in to collect their payment and beats up their mom for not paying enough. He then takes the two sons and offers them a job to make up for the remaining payment and send them off to kill an ex-Yakuza member. That's why they meet Yusuke, who defeats the Yakuza guy and gets him arrested while letting the brothers escape in time. 1 week has passed by since then and everyone is wondering when they will be summoned for the next quest. One night, while engaging in some hobbies, they all get teleported to the other world and meet their fifth member as well. Same as everyone else, Keita is summoned inside the pond with the tentacle monster, and after swimming out, he gets greeted by the game master. He spins his role into a spear warrior and tells them about their next quest, which is to offer the Giffen Buffo at Victimania within 20 days. Besides that, their revival cooldown has increased from 40 seconds to 50 seconds now, and they all have access to a new ability that lets them teleport to a location that they have visited at least once before. With all that laid out, they quickly fill in Keita on what is happening and teleport to Kahabel City to find more information about all these fancy words they read on the quest board. After reaching her city, they walk around and soon run into her. She looks relatively older but still beautiful and now has kids of her own. Hakozaki also meets an older guy who turns out to be the child she saved during the troll attack in the nearby village. It has been 15 long years in this world, so they decide to sit down with Kahabel to catch up on what happened while they were gone. She tells them that she lost her hand during a war with the Deok Kingdom, and after she got married and had kids, she decided to retire altogether as a knight. She tells them that Giffen is the name of an island and tells them about a way to get there, and then spends the rest of the day with Yusuke and finally manages to tell him about her true feelings and parts ways with him with a sweet kiss. After finally getting kissed while being conscious, he walks out with the other heroes as they depart for Giffen and wonders what all these quests were all about. During their conversation, Keita also thanks him for saving his and his brother's life and reveals that he is a middle school dropout who helped raise his younger brother by doing odd jobs. Some days later they reach Giffen Island and are greeted by two girls. They introduce themselves as ritual dancers, Ayu and Yana. They tell them that Giffen Buffos are a kind of special buffaloes that are found and bred on their island, and Victimania is the name of a special harvest festival. However, this year they won't be able to celebrate the festival because 5 years ago a band of orcs arrived on their island and started living in the impenetrable castle built by their ancestors 400 years ago. They are man-eating monsters, and the island people requested for them to accept the Giffen Buffo as an alternate food source, but their numbers keep multiplying and soon they will start eating people as well. With that in mind, they have all decided to attack them on the day of the festival when their leader, the Orc Queen, comes to receive the buffos. For that purpose, they have hired many mercenaries from across the continent, and if they want the festival to happen, they must help them defeat the orcs as well. Meanwhile, someone overhears their conversation and goes to the Orc Queen and tells her about it. The next day, they go out to the shore and meet up with all the mercenaries and other combatants from the village. One of the important NPCs include a former general called Cantle, who has fought many battles against orcs before. They all form teams based on weapon types and expertise to train for the final battle, and Yusuke doesn't make it because you can't fight orcs with short-range weapons like a pan and a knife, while Hakozaki and Yuka fail the test because they are just useless. Unlike them, Yusuke feels bad about not making it and goes off to grind some levels to get a good new role. He starts off by asking the ritual dancers about other monsters on the island, but they tell him that there are none as their ancestors destroyed all of them in the past. With that option out the window, he decides to gain XP by farming and cooking and eventually gets enough points to level up. The game master appears and spins the wheel for him, and this time he gets another super rare role as the blacksmith. At first he feels sad about it, but then goes to the local blacksmith to become his apprentice and starts off by creating new weapons for his team that everyone can use. His first creation is called a stork, which is a hammer and axe with a stake attached to it. Meanwhile, the orcs send one of their 15 mature males to check upon the humans, and he gets turned into sashimi by Cantle and some other cool looking NPCs while Shindo and Keita watch on from their gray screen. It turns out one of the mercenaries is an old inhabitant of the island named Fanza, who left the village when he was young and is now back to free it of the orcs' influence. With one down, there are 14 more giant orcs left to slay until the island will be set free, and they all start doubling down on their preparations for the big day. But one night, they get ambushed by the orcs as they send 3 of them at once to the shore. Everyone rushes towards the shore to fight the 3 orcs, and Cantle decides to show off some high-level skills as well. But Yusuke arrives just in time to snatch the spotlight away from him by shooting down one of the orcs with his newly casted power bow. After taking one down, the bow needs a lot of time to reload, and the orcs start walking towards Cantle to make canned food out of him, but just then a young scout named Rice jumps out and starts running towards the orcs to grab their attention. However, he manages to ruin his moment by tripping and falling on the ground like an idiot. This works in their favor still as the orcs start chasing after him, and it gives just enough time to Yusuke to shoot another stake from his launcher. With that, the orcs retreat and the heroes and mercenaries decide to take down all the orcs tonight. Yusuke gives the machine to Yuka and Hakazaki, and they end up naming it the Orc Eater. Yusuke jumps down with Rice as they try to make the orcs chase after them. They quickly take down the one behind Rice, and it gives Yuka just enough points to level up. Her new job turns out to be a ranger, and then the battle continues as they move Orc Eater and take down the one chasing after Yusuke as well. The next morning, Yusuke decides to try his hands at soloing an orc, but gets his cheeks literally clapped to dust when his attack does negative damage. After that, the orc starts creating mud balls to throw at their defenses and ends up opening up a path inside the village. More orcs follow suit, and it looks like they will get inside, but once again, Rice jumps out like a hero and goes for a swing attack on one of the orcs. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't have plot armor like the real heroes and gets one shot like a fly. Yusuke, Hakazaki, and Yuka make the most out of his sacrifice and make sure to defeat the other orcs and manage to cull their numbers down to a measly adults, including the queen. After some time, Yusuke wonders where the queen is and thinks that she must be at the cave where the ritual dancers and the villagers are, and decides to go provide backup to them. Yuka says that they are out of bullets, but one of the villagers comes up and says that the old blacksmith is still working at the smithy to create more ammunition. They decide to go to the smithy themselves and leave the villagers to deal with the incoming orcs. On the other hand, Shindo and Cantle encounter the queen orc, who is headed towards the ship with children. She says that she agreed to peace and didn't kill any humans, but now they have breached their contract and have taken away her children for no reason. So now it's just fair that she takes their children away from them as well. Hearing this, Shindo starts questioning the side she is fighting for, and Yusuke confirms that from an objective point of view, they are the evil ones. Cantle and Shindo challenge her and start fighting her with some hit and run tactics. To counter them, the queen uses the hard ignoring technique and starts walking towards the ship. She throws a projectile at the ship, but Shindo comes in between and gets caught. The queen then uses Brain no Jutsu and grabs Shindo's body and throws her into the ocean, letting her enjoy the underwater tour for eternity. With one of the heroes out, Cantle jumps out as well and decides to go one-on-one against the Orc Queen, but Shindo notices that something is wrong with the water, and it's a sign of a big tsunami coming their way. On the other hand, Yusuke and the other run towards the smithy and on their way, cry over their lost companions who got isekai'd to hell. Eventually, they make it to the smithy and realize that the stakes that the old blacksmith is making cannot be used by heroes, so they leave the gun behind with the villagers and tell them to have a shot at it under Keita's supervision. Yuka says that she will stay behind and tells them to go to the cave where the orc's palace is, and Yusuke and Keita start running towards it with Fanza and some other men. When they reach the castle, the island starts shaking heavily, and they turn around and see that the dormant volcano in the middle of the island isn't so dormant anymore, with fireballs and lava gushing out of it like a fountain, and a massive tsunami coming their way. The whole scene starts looking like that one Pokemon movie with Kyogre and Groudon. Keita gets shot down by one of the fireballs as collateral damage, and Yusuke gets stuck with dragging his body along with him inside the castle. The island starts splitting up and people start falling into some hot yummy lava. It looks like hell everywhere. AU gets stuck inside the cave with some villagers as it starts collapsing. The end looks near, and for some reason, Yana decides that it's the best time for her to sing a pop idol song, and well, that's that. On the other hand, Yusuke and Keita manage to make their way inside the castle while AU also leads the villagers inside through a secret tunnel that connects the cave with the old castle. Yusuke asks AU about any weaknesses of the structure that she might know of and says that he plans to bring the whole palace down with all the orcs inside to get rid of them all at once. She becomes emotional and says that the palace is a piece of art and history for them, and it has been standing strong for over 400 years and doesn't have any weaknesses. Yusuke looks at her and says okay, and then walks inside saying that he will then go look for a place where they can fight the orcs to their advantage. Meanwhile, outside the castle, a massive black-scaled dragon comes out of the volcano and he doesn't look too happy about getting his nap cut short. The dragon starts flying over the island and drains life energy from everyone on it. While he is having his feast, Yusuke and the others focus on getting rid of the orcs in the castle. Yusuke eventually comes up with a plan to lure the orcs out through a narrow passage so only one can walk up at the time. This way, they will ambush them on the entrance and start culling their numbers down until none is left. To make it happen, they try to show themselves in front of them and make fun of the orcs, but they never walk out from the narrow passage. To change things up, they hook up some of the villagers to do the baiting work and go inside the passage themselves to ambush them. Their plan results in a success as they manage to take one of them down, but then gets squashed by another orc who follows behind. This orc eats up Keita's legs, making him Sir Legless. But when the orc turns around, Yusuke notices a small lady orc hanging from its back, and they realize that the orcs inside the castle are protecting her as their next queen. If that girl manages to survive, they will be able to repopulate the island with their numbers, and all this culling will be for nothing. With that in mind, Yusuke uses his evil mind to come up with a scheme to use her as bait to make the orcs follow them to their death. They also wonder about new ways to lure them out, and AU says that she learned a little bit of Orsanese from the books she read in her childhood and uses the legendary phrase Diko Thorobo, which means I have leg hair in Orcish. After that, they load up a cart with some lava and fix Keita in front of it and send him in towards the orcs with his spear. He takes down one of them and burns the other, and this gives Yusuke enough room to go in and grab the girl. After that, he stabs her down and makes the other orc follow behind him until he throws her into the lava and sends the adult orc behind her as well. While doing so, he feels guilty for being the one on the evil side this time, but then walks back thinking he had to do what he had to do. Meanwhile, the orc queen manages to swim across the ocean and makes her way on top of the ship with human children. She turns the ship back towards the island and plans to eat them all, but then Fanza jumps in as well and challenges her to a duel. She high-diffs him with a hard wing and sends him back flying into a wall, but then Shindo jumps inside the ship and reveals that due to the tsunami forming, the water started going back and she managed to revive on the seabed with no water. She then fights the orc queen but quickly realizes that she is no match for her. If she wants to put her down for good, she needs Thanza's big sword. The queen knows this as well and turns around to put Thanza down, but just then, a stake comes flying from behind and shoots through her chest. She turns around to see who got her in the end and finds Hakazaki shooting at her with the final stake Yusuke had made that they managed to retrieve from the battlefield. She starts falling down and Thanza uses this chance to kill Steel Shindo and jumps in with his massive sword and stabs her into the ocean. Back at the castle, Yusuke notices that everyone is feeling sluggish, and AU tells him that for some reason, everyone's life force is being sucked out of them and is going into the sky. Yusuke equips his wizard glove as well and confirms that the black dragon is the source of it all. AU also tells him that 5 years ago, there was a shipwreck near their island, and inside it there was an open cage, and they suspect that the orc queen was being kept inside it. It is highly likely that there is someone behind it all and who purposefully sent the orcs on their island. Back in the ocean, Thanza is trying to pull off an amazing Spider-Man by holding the ship back on his own to stop it from getting into the lava. Meanwhile, Yusuke and Keita walk up to the mountain following the flow of the magic to see where the dragon was. On their way, they run into a guy named Raji, who says that he was inspecting the land and got stuck there. Yusuke tells him to go back or else he will die of the poisonous gases from the volcano, and then they continue walking up until they encounter the dragon. Keita decides to charge straight at it with his spear but turns into Seek Kebab as the dragon roasts him up with a fire breath. Yusuke decides to instantly run back and on his way, grabs Raji as well to save as many people as he can. But it turns out, Raji is the real mastermind who summoned the dragon and brought the orcs on the island. He thinks that Yusuke is attacking him because he found out his real identity and reveals it himself, but then Yusuke drops him off and asks what he was yapping about. They both take a moment to look at each other's dumb faces and realize what just happened, and Yusuke calls him out and goes in for an attack with his kitchen utensils. Raji fires back with a quick fire blast and roasts him into charcoal, and then waits for him to revive. Yusuke hides behind a rock and wonders about his options and sees Keita standing behind Raji with his spear on a rock. He tries to surprise attack him, but Raji dodges it as well and then freezes them both into popsicles before rushing down the mountain to attack AU to serve as his distraction for the heroes. He eventually corners her and shoots a fireball at her, but Yusuke makes it just in time and saves her at the cost of his walk. He uses creature magic alongside her to stop Raji, and they manage to land a hit on him with Keita's spear from behind. But Raji blocks it with his hand and makes an escape on his wyvern. Keita notices a bottle with some red color on the floor where Raji was standing and recalls that he saw the same color painted on the rock Raji was sitting at. He tells the others about it and they go back up the mountain and find a magic circle painted on the rock. They decide to erase it and find out that it is one of the reasons why life force is being sucked out of the islanders and going to the dragon. On the other hand, Yana manages to figure out about the circles as well thanks to her magic sight and finds one of them by following the magic flow alongside a map drawer. They manage to locate all the circles alongside Yusuke's group and free the island of the dragon's influence. Once the life force stops coming in, the dragon flies back inside the volcano as well and it calms down for good. With all that done and dusted, they get together at the shore where the ship with the children was docked and pay respect to the amazing Thanza's burnt up ass. After that, they hold the festival and offer a Jiffen Buffo at it to finish their quest and earns a question from the Game Master, which Keita wastes away by asking what Raji was planning to do, and the Game Master replies that he was trying to revive the dragon before going away with a bye and sending them all back home. Meanwhile, Raji is shot down by the legendary mage Fatina, who is the same person who saved Yuka in the 4th quest. She saves Cantal, who had been stranded in the ocean for a whole day, and that's the end of his story. Back on Earth, the Game Master pays Yusuke a visit and says that soon he will meet the 6th player, and vanishes away just as quickly. Just then, Yusuke receives a call from his friends and he goes out to see them with a blonde-haired older foreigner named Glenda. Glenn says that she is there to make a movie about them and that the girl in white clothes led her there. They talk a little bit about the other world, and she says that she has found around 4 people from around the world, including from France, America, and Japan, who have described the same world down to the tiny details despite not having any connection at all. Some of them have already passed away while others stopped replying to her suddenly, and Yusuke wonders if that's because they failed a quest or if their party got wiped all at once. After that, Glenn says that her goal is to create a short film with them to post on YouTube to call out everyone who may have visited this world, and Yusuke calls out Shindo and Hakazaki to help him with the shooting. Their video gets a lot of views and some comments as well, and as payment, Shindo asks Yusuke to stop being so polite around the group when they are together. A few days later, they all get teleported to the other world for their next quest, and as expected, Glenn is their 6th member. Her role comes out to be an axe warrior, and this time they get to choose their quest from 2 options. Option A has a 90-day deadline, and they have to bring down the rate of crack addiction in the USA to 3%. And the other option is to protect the village of Zagroth in 30 days. Keita cuts the process of deciding short and simply picks the shorter quest, and they all decide to pay Kahabel a visit to get some info about this god-forsaken village. It turns out it has been over 17 years since they last came to this world, and Kahabel is long dead. Her little daughters are now grown women about the same age as when they first met her, and the daughter helps them find the way to Zagroth. They go through a thick forest with high-leveled monsters and eventually run into an old shack with a silver-haired kid living inside. Glenn tells Hakazaki to talk to her, and the girl reveals that her name is Jesby and she is from the village of Zagroth. She ran away from the village with her father and was hiding from them because she thought that they were from the village. They stay the night with her and ask her for directions to the village. She tells them that it's located inside a dormant volcano, and we all know how that turned out the last time. Still, she knows the secret passage that leads to the village's entrance and promises to guide them there the next day. The following morning, they get attacked by a parasitic zombie, and it turns out the victim was Jesby's dad. Yusuke butchers the zombie down, which makes Jesby really disturbed, but he says that he gotta do what he gotta do and rolls with it. After that, she takes them to the village using the secret cave system inside the volcano, and on their way, tells them that the village chief sends away old people out of the village to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Her father spoke up against the chief to stop this practice, and to shut him up the chief decided to send her father away as well. After he was banished, she ran away as well and found out that he had settled outside the village, and she has been living with him since. When they enter the village, they are encountered by a young boy, and Jesby immediately recognizes him as her neighbor, Frock, and hugs him. He takes her to her home and reveals that after they left, her mother passed away as well, and they decided to take her younger brother, Lonan, in. He then brings Lonan there as well, but he is in depression and doesn't respond to anything at all. Yusuke finds all this really disturbing and walks out alongside Glenn, and they eventually run into the granddaughter of the village chief, Iris, who sets up a meeting between them. The village chief welcomes them nicely like the cunning rat he is, and then tells them that they have no need for heroes in their village as it is the very image of peace. To counter him, Yusuke says that he heard several reports of them getting attacked by strong monsters, and he asks him where he heard that from. Iris says that it was Jesby, and the village chief says that she is a poor girl, and he is really sorry for what he had to do to her father. After that, he says that he has a great plan to deal with the monsters and asks them to follow him to the basement so he can show them his goods in detail. Glenn immediately recognizes the pedo inside him, but they follow him anyway and ends up getting themselves caught inside an iron-barred cell. After that, the chief goes to Jesby and Frock's house and tells the remaining heroes that he is there to invite them and that the other two heroes are at his mansion enjoying a banquet as well. They all decide to follow him like idiots and end up getting the bridge cut beneath their feet as they hang on for their responsible lives. Back at Frock's house, the village chief's guards capture Jesby and start walking her to the chief's mansion, while Shindo manages to knock the chief out with some wind magic and saves all of them from falling down into oblivion. After that, they capture the chief and walk with him back to the mansion to rescue Yusuke and Glenn, but then they are stopped by a group of villagers who are there to get some answers about the monsters that are surrounding the village from the chief. Just then, the other guards arrive with Jesby as well, but Frock jumps in and saves her. The village chief tries to frame the heroes as invaders trying to take over their village, but all this drama stops when the monsters start poking their heads from above the volcano like some Attack on Titan fan. Soon, Glenn and Yusuke make their way out of the cell as well by cutting through the wooden ceiling above them. Once they are all together, they look outside and realize that they can't fight against all the high-leveled monsters out there. Besides that, they wonder why monsters of different species are working together to attack the village. With less than 10 minutes at their disposal, they decide to run out of the village, but the cave they came in from is blocked by monsters, so they decide to use a secret route through the dried-up well in the backyard of the chief's mansion. Shindo and Keita make some ladders for everyone to climb down with, and then they all go down after grouping up with Jesby, Frock, and Lonan. Drop F in the comments for Frock's mom who couldn't make it. After that, they walk through the cave for 6 hours before they see some sunshine and eventually make their way out. Keita wonders what they are supposed to do now as the village has already been destroyed, but Yusuke says that they must keep the remaining villagers with them alive because them not failing the mission still means that these people are considered part of the village, and as long as they are alive, they have a chance at completing this mission. With that, they all walk into the plains and away from the village and eventually come across a lake with a man-made trail. They figure that there must be a human settlement nearby, so Yusuke and Glenn decide to go ahead and find out. Meanwhile, Keita and the others wait in the forest and get attacked by some goblins. They fight back to defend themselves, and soon Glenn and Yusuke join them as well. They return with a former villager who turns out to be Frock's elder brother. He takes them back to their settlement of people who were expelled from the village by the old chief and decided to live together in the forest. They offer them food and shelter for the night and talk about what happened to the village. Frock's elder brother tells them that he initially left the village to find New Eden, which is said to be a safe zone where humans can live without the fear of monsters. The village chief adds that there is more to the old myth, and that is that only those who are willing to sacrifice themselves will be able to enter New Eden, which basically means it's just paradise that you go to when you expire. Besides that, Yusuke says that he suspects someone is controlling the monsters and they attacked before their quest's deadline, and also the monsters don't work together normally. Frock's brother says that they can continue looking for a new place to settle, and Jesby stands up and says that her father told her that New Eden was real and she is sure that with the help of the heroes they can find it. Frock's brother says that they have to worry about a goblin settlement as well, and the next night, he takes Yusuke, Shindo, and Keita with him to clear the goblins. Meanwhile, the village chief is attacked and put to rest by someone, and it becomes a mystery who killed him. Yusuke and the others return and they all go to the goblin settlement to loot it for resources and make camp there. Glenn continues her investigation and finds out that one of the old villagers was the culprit, as he confessed to it accidentally and had a bladed knife as well that matched the chief's wound. On the other hand, Iris sits down in a hut with Keita and the other kids and complains that they won't have to walk anymore if they could find the flying monster that she once saw flying over the village. Later that night, while the heroes discuss the matter of the chief's death, they notice Iris walking to the hut where the suspect was being kept. Keita runs to her and finds out that she has been infected by a parasite worm similar to what turned Jesby's father into a zombie. Zombie Iris attacks Keita, and in self-defense he plays some fruit ninja with her and puts her down. After that, he becomes the second member of the group who has actually slain someone and starts feeling really sad about it because he actually liked to play with Iris as a younger sister. With that happening, they decide to move forward with the villagers to find New Edent, and on their way, they all notice their life force getting weaker. Yusuke and the others remember this effect from their last quest on Jiffen Island and wonder if there is a dragon bishop like Raji here as well. Just then, they are attacked by a bunch of goblins followed by a group of kobolds. At first they all manage to fight them off decently, but then a high-leveled troll jumps in and eats Shindo up, followed by Hakazaki, reminding Yusuke of his first time in this new world. The troll runs away, and while Keita chases after it to make it puke his dear Shindo out, Yusuke tells him to come back, and then they all get surprised to see Cantle standing in front of them in the forest. He sits down with them and tells them that he was saved by Fatina and became her apprentice, and how this world is under attack by a group called the Dragon Bishops who want to resurrect dragons, and his mission is to make sure they can't do that. He says that some years ago a magical meteorite fell near this place and its fragments became one with the land. These fragments are rich in magical energy, and that's why all the monsters in this area are so strong, and he suspects that a dragon bishop is conducting a blood ritual here as well. To make things right, he gives them some special seeds which grow into copyright-free versions of Jack and the Beanstalk and soak up the excess magical energy from the land. After planting a few of them, they continue looking for that troll and the meteorite fragment and eventually run into the monster that ate their girls. Yusuke, Keita, and Hakazaki manage to hunt it down, and once the whole group is together they climb up a waterfall using the beanstalk to check upon the meteorite fragment poking out of the cliff. Once up there, Yusuke thinks back on the saying about New Eden that the village chief told them about and decides to jump down the waterfall. To his surprise, once he's underwater, the currents calm down, and when he swims back up, he finds himself in a beautiful town with around 300 people living in it. This turns out to be the place known as New Eden by the outsiders. On the other hand, Glenn finds out that Jesby is acting strangely, and Lonan has regained his memories and can't seem to remember her either. It turns out, Jesby is the actual dragon bishop, and she was the mastermind behind all this all along. After getting called out, Jesby tries to play innocent but eventually gives in and shows her true colors. She reveals that she had been using the parasitic worms to infect and control people and monsters, and WS using memory-altering magic to make it so all the villagers accept her as one of them. She truck-cunned the village elder because he started to question her existence as a villager herself. After that, she walks out of the hut and tries to attack them, but Cantle arrives in time and shoots back. She then rides her wyvern and rides off towards the meteorite fragment where Yusuke and the other heroes are. Once there, she reveals her true identity to them and calls out all the monsters in her control to finish them off and to attack the hidden village on the other side of the waterfall to farm it for her blood ritual. They all fight against the monsters but realize that they are brutally outnumbered. Cantle finds out where the magic circles were and tells Yusuke about them being on 6 golems before getting shot down by Jesby. Yusuke tells this to others and goes to attack Jesby herself over the fragment. Their fight lasts for a few moments, but he manages to seal a magical beanstalk seed inside her body and uses his creature wizard spell to make it grow faster. The beanstalk grows inside her body and seals her away, and she sets herself on fire before giving them any answers at all. Soon, Fatina arrives on the scene and breaks the fragment with her powers and reveals the hidden village behind the waterfall. The old folks and children of the Zograth village meet up with the people of New Eden, and in the end Yusuke requests them to name this new village Zograth as well, and this marks the completion of their quest. The game master stops time and gives Glenn one question. She asks him how the dragon will appear in their world, and he says that there is a small rift between the two worlds that connects them, and it will continue to widen until the day when the dragon appears. After that, they are all sent back to their own world and continue with their lives waiting for their next mission. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on post notifications so you never miss out on my videos. Until next time, take care.